have a bit of a confession to make to all you guys, just a little confession, which is that in my 8-year journey of being a freelance filmmaker, I may have made a few mistakes along the way. To be fair, a lot of them could have been avoided, but also many of them actually played a really invaluable role in helping me to become better at what I do. So in this video, I'm gonna talk to you about 3 things that I wish I knew before getting into filmmaking. In my first year of film school, I wasn't particularly social. Most of the time I just spent in my dorm room watching films, consuming YouTube videos, and also reading film books. I sort of embodied the fantasy of being this lone wolf character who would stay at home toiling away on his craft while everyone else was out partying, drinking, and having sex. But as I finished my second year of film school, I started to realize that a lot of my other peers were going off and working on their own really cool projects outside of uni time, while I was focusing on being this lone wolf character who was focusing on the university's course curriculum. And I was hoping that those film projects would make my skills stand out. And then eventually my peers would realize that I'm talented and they would reach out to me and ask me personally to work on their project. And at this point, I really had to face the reality that this just wasn't the best way for me to build up my skill set as a filmmaker. And I realized that I had to be the one to start reaching out to these people and start offering them value and trying to help them in any way that I could. So I did. I ended up messaging this other group of students in my year group, and I just offered to help them in any way that I could for free. And from these initial freebies that I did, I ended up building really close bonds and trust with these people, and they subsequently asked me to work on a lot of their other projects. And perhaps most importantly, one of these directors recommended me to another filmmaker in a lower year group, and this person ended up being one of my closest collaborators even to this day. And we ended up creating projects together that were more successful than most of the graduation films in my whole year. What this whole process made me realize is that it's equally as important to go out and socialize and drink with friends and make connections as it is to get your head down working on a film project, because these people and connections that you make, they're gonna be the people who are gonna help guide you to new experiences. And you're both gonna help each other progress through the film industry by collaborating with one another and sharing each other's knowledge together in order to help you both advance. And you could be the most talented filmmaker in the world, but people need to like you first before they decide to hire you for those talents. And ultimately in creative fields, your degree doesn't really mean anything. What really matters is, can you showcase your talent, and do people want to be around you enough that they'll give you the opportunity to demonstrate those talents? And that is the ultimate combination to have in order for you to land more projects and opportunities. When you're just starting out, I'd recommend that your goal should be to try and get as much experience as possible. And that's why often you'll be working for pretty much no money at all. But that's just because you can't trade on your talent yet, because let's be honest, you don't have a lot of it. But what you can trade on is your time. But as your skills and connections grow, a lot more opportunities will come your way. Now, the problem is you're going to fall into the trap of wanting to say yes to all of them. And also you're gonna think that every single project that you take on is gonna lead to more projects. You'll think every free shoot that you do will eventually lead towards that paid project with the same production company or director. But from my personal experience, this isn't always the case. I've done a bunch of shoots that I later regretted, either because they weren't particularly fun to do, or because I didn't actually end up learning any new experiences or skills that would have been useful to me. Film projects take so much of your time and energy away that when you're on a 13-hour day, shooting in the woods at night, in the rain, getting paid a measly £50, it's gonna be really hard for you to have your passion for filmmaking help carry you through that project and future projects on a consistent basis. I learned a mindset from branding expert Chris Do, who really helped change the way I think about whether or not to say yes or no to a project.
Protect your enthusiasm. I want you to think about, to protect your enthusiasm, when you agree to terms and working conditions that you're not happy about, when things get a little nasty and it's like late at night and you're trying to work on the edit or the color correction, or there's one other shot that you really want to get but you don't want to do it now because you're a little bitter about the whole process. If you got paid more, you would do it. And if you got paid more, you'd be happier while you're doing it. And so you need to protect that enthusiasm, because at the end of the day, you are somewhat a reflection of the body of work that you've built. So having a bunch of half-assed B- projects is really going to get you more C projects. They're not going to get you the A projects. So protect your enthusiasm.
So when you get offered a film job, consider how you'll feel at the end of that shoot. If you're going to be filming for 4 days straight, trapped in a fluorescent blinding warehouse, or if you're going to be working with crew members that maybe you had a bad experience with before. Is it really worth the time and energy to work on certain projects if what you believe that you're going to get out of it is not going to be particularly valuable to you? I'm thinking about making a video where I talk about my particular strategy for how I decide to say yes or no to a film project, so leave a comment below if you'd be interested to see this video. Before I went to film school or even considered that filmmaking could be a career path that I could potentially take, I actually wanted to be a YouTuber. I really admired the first generation of YouTube filmmakers, people like Ryan Connolly of Film Riot and Freddie Wong of the Freddie W channel. But around 2008, there seemed to be a really clear difference between being a YouTuber and a proper filmmaker. My personal goal was to always want to work on big movie sets with actors and established musicians. So at that point in my life, I kind of felt like I had to make a mental decision as to the path that I would start to take and how I would spend the next few decades of my life pursuing filmmaking. And I ultimately chose to pursue the path of becoming a proper filmmaker. But as YouTube began to grow year by year, and as the availability of cinema like DSLRs and mirrorless cameras became more available, that old ladder and the only route of making your way up the film industry, of starting out as a runner, then working your way to being a camera trainee, camera assistant, focus puller, and then eventually the coveted position of being either a director or a cinematographer. It seemed like that was no longer the only route that you had to take in order to become a successful filmmaker. For example, some of the YouTubers that I admired as a kid went on to create high-budget TV shows and commercials. Freddie W made a show called Video Game High School that ended up being streamed on Netflix. More recent YouTubers like Matt Diavella, he made a documentary about minimalism that also was streamed on Netflix. And Peter McKinnon has made commercials for companies such as DJI and Hyundai, having his work plastered across huge billboards in cities. The way I like to think about the topic of which path should you focus your attention towards is to consider this question. What would the filmmakers that you admire have done if they had access to YouTube and social media when they begun their careers? Roger Deakins, considered by many to be one of the greatest living cinematographers on the planet, even he's started a podcast now. David F. Sandberg, director of movies such as Annabelle Creation, has a YouTube channel with over 300,000 subscribers. And countless other industry professionals are featuring on YouTube channels to share their knowledge with the world. All this being said, you can still take the traditional role of working your way up in the industry, and there's really nothing wrong with this path. It even has some advantages in that you'll probably be able to get on bigger high-end productions much quicker, albeit in a trainee position. But I've noticed far too many times that people who take this route end up staying in these assistant positions for a very long time, simply because it ends up becoming their main source of income, and it just ends up being a lot more risky to just leap out into the world to search for head of department roles, and often when they do, it'll be for little to no money, at least at the very beginning. Even now, with YouTube being such a big part of culture and an incredibly valuable resource in a lot of people's lives, many creatives still aren't taking full advantage of these new mediums in order to share their voice and show the world what they can do. I hope I can be another voice that helps filmmakers and creatives realize that there are more paths out there that you can explore. And if you choose to follow them, your growth is going to accelerate. And often it's as simple as sharing your journey and knowledge with others to better help the up-and-coming creatives below you. In a weird way, I'm kind of glad that I didn't know these career mistakes beforehand, because by experiencing them personally, I feel like I understand the consequences of them on a much deeper level, and I've been able to implement the lessons from them faster. So by you having watched this video, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're guaranteed to avoid these mistakes, but I hope it'll help you recognize when you're doing them or when you're about to. If you're curious to know what my 5 favorite music videos of all time are, then you can check out this other video on my channel right here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.